Imagine communities. Nations and nationalism are the concepts that we hear quite often, but how do we know their essence and the history of their origin? Since school mosaic consisting a huge number of states has been sealed in our mind. This is a strictly drawn grid where each element has borders, names, flags, and its own nation. Nowadays, this grid of nation-states is perceived as something obvious. Here is a map of states, and each has its own nation with own long history, but not everything is so simple. Nations and nationalism is completely new concept. But here is an important question. At what point in history did the population of certain territorial units feel like a single nation? And why a lot of people from different parts of the state, who have never seen each other in their lives and will not see, feel like one nation? And why can we say about the population of USA Americans or about the population of Indonesians? Also, we are well aware that many ethnic groups have lived and live in each other countries. Let's look at who first formed the idea of themselves as a nation and how this idea later became universal. Benedict Anderson, in his book Imagine Communities, makes interesting judgments on these issues. Actually, there is no single well-established definition of the concept of nation, but author suggests the following. This is an imagined political community, and it seems to be in kind of limited, but at the same time sovereign. It's imagined because each of the members of the nation thinks of himself or other compatriots who are completely unfamiliar to him as part of one single community, and limited because the whole of humanity can't be part of one nation, and any nation is limited to a number of specific individuals. And it's sovereign because the nation is born at this time of revolution and enlightenment ideas, and some communities of people depend on dynastic states and feel like partnership and decided to fight for their independence, and that's why they form new sovereign states. Let's start with those very first communities that managed to feel like a nation even before the communities of continental Europe. There are Creoles. Who are they? There are people who had European roots but were born in North or South America. The first reason is administrative units. For example, take South America and the Spanish colonies. As the continent was conquered from the beginning of the 16th century, the Spanish crown formed clear administrative units and vice captaincy. This rigid delineation of borders will later play a cruel joke on Spain. And second is functioning employees within the same administrative units. The Spanish Empire couldn't provide all posts in its viceroyalty with Spanish officials from the European continent. That's why the empire had to recruit Creoles to the post of minor officials. The Spain crown disliked Spaniards born outside Spain, so the nobility of the Creoles had no role in their careers. The Creoles shared the sense of common purpose. After all, they worked for the government which didn't like them and didn't allow the management of their viceroyalty. This leads to the third reason, contempt and discrimination. Out of 170 viceroys in Spanish America, only 4 were Creoles. And this is despite the fact that in entire Western Empire were about 3 million Creoles, and Spaniards from Europe were only 5%. It's important to remember that it's the functioning Creole aristocrats who will initiate revolutions for independence. And the fourth reason for the nation is print capitalism. Due to the common provincial newspaper, a sense of community arose. This is what allowed the Creoles to comprehend the boundaries of their homeland. Print capitalism helped to comprehend their multiplicity and strength. And so, by the end of the 18th century, we got that can be called the first communities to comprehend themselves as a nation. They only had to separate from the empire and organize a sovereign country. Based on the result of this whole story, we see that the phenomenon of the nation is unique, The communities of South America who spoke the same language as the metropolis, who had the same blood, nevertheless feel like a different nation, which include not only Creoles but even local Indian people. And also we should mention two states of German Empire and Italy on the map in 1871, which were formed from many disparate kingdoms into United Nations. The emergence of nationalities in South Asian countries, for example Indonesia, says a lot about nation as a phenomenon. The territory of the 16th century state was under the control of the Netherlands, where in fact colonialism artificially created the phenomenon of the Indonesian nation. This happened as a result of three factors. The first is the population census. The leaders of the colonial state didn't care about ethnocultural features when conducting the population census, and we know that a huge number of ethnic groups live in Indonesia, but it was easier to government to generalize and estimate the population of its colony. Secondly, the map plays a significant role. The administrative unit drawn by the colonies without taking into account the real ethnic borders gave rise to new nationalities. And the third is museum, the concept that summarizes the entire national historical past. The famous temples of Borobudur and Prambanan are becoming a real national treasure.